Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Welcome, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining me. Tonight, I would like to briefly revisit a topic that we spoke about a few days ago and tie it to a subject which is going to be particularly pertinent in the next few days. So let me begin first of all, preface what I want to really talk about by revisiting the topic that we spoke about previously. And that topic that we spoke about previously was that we mentioned in a halaqah which we entitled, "Be careful from whom you take religious knowledge." We mentioned the statement of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, who said, "Zallatu alim, zallatu alam." He said, the error of a scholar results in the error of entire nations. And we mentioned that what that basically means is that seldom does a scholar, a learned person, a person who has gained a certain level of notoriety, prestige, celebrity, fame, and people listen to what he says, takes his knowledge, make a mistake, except that his mistake transcends himself and impacts his contemporaries in large numbers. And in many cases, it impacts generations to come, people beyond his contemporaries. Seldom is his mistake and the effects of it restricted to himself. And there's a few things that let's contemplate this statement of Umar radiallahu anh and some of the implications of it. One thing is that it teaches us that the scholars, in spite of their massive amounts of knowledge, they err. They make mistakes. And there's no blame on them. It's human to err. As the Prophet said in the hadith, "Kullu bani Adam khata." All of the sons of Adam, all the human beings make mistakes. It's human. To err is human, kama yuqal. But these scholars, they do err. And since they err, because they are human, since they don't always get it right, since they do make mistakes, we have the right to scrutinize and to basically try to make sure that whatever they're telling us and whatever information they're giving us and we're consuming it, that we have to try to make sure that it's right, because they're human beings and they can err. They have the propensity to err. The third thing that we can take away from the statement of Umar radiallahu anh is that it's not proper for us to follow their mistakes knowingly. Or if we have a strong suspicion, a strong inkling that they've said something erroneous, we can't follow it simply because they are scholars. Notice Umar, he said, "Zallatu alim, zallatu alam." The mistake or the error of the scholar is also an error for the one who follows him. It's not correct because the scholar said it. It also automatically it's wrong for him, but it becomes right for us. That's another thing that we can take away from what Omar said. So now if you understand this, you'll understand that we are required to follow the truth, to follow what's right, and not to follow the scholars if we suspect or if we know for certain that they're wrong. We're not allowed to do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, "Ittabi'u ma unzila ilaykum min rabbikum wa la tattabi'u min dunihi awliya." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, follow what has been revealed to you from your Lord, the divine truth contained in the Quran and the Hadith. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ, and do not follow instead of it awliya, people that you love, people you admire, people who you respect and look up to, the scholars. Meaning that when you're put in a situation where the divine guidance is saying A, and the statement of the scholar is saying B, something contradictory and not in keeping with the evidence, you have no right to follow the scholar instead of the evidence. You have to follow the evidence. وَيُؤَكِّدْ ذَلك, and this is confirmed by a practical example from the life of Ibn Abbas, the great companion and scholar of our religion, who once, during the Hajj season, was speaking to different people and giving them advice and guidance about al-Hajj, the pilgrimage, the great ritual rites of pilgrimage. So some of the people, they asked him about of pilgrimage. And Ibn Abbas, he told him, not only is this acceptable, prescribed, it is the best form of Hajj. So those people, and he basically told them that this is what the Prophet said. This is what the Prophet recommended. This is what the Prophet encouraged people to do. And when he said that, the people responded and said, but Abu Bakr and Umar, they disallow it. They don't permit it. So what do you say about that? So Ibn Abbas, he has a famous response to this. He says, يوشك أن تنزل عليكم حجارة من السماء أقول قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وتقولون قال أبو بكر وعمر. He said, I fear that stones are about to rain down upon your heads from the heavens. I say, the messenger of Allah said, and you respond, but Abu Bakr and Umar said. Saying it's appropriate that once Allah and His messenger have, that we contradict, oppose what they've said with the statement of someone else, even if it's Abu Bakr and Umar. We know who these two men are. We know they're the most knowledgeable of the Prophet's companions, and they are his two successors. And they are the people about whom the Prophet said, he said, alaykum bi sunnati wa sunnatul khulafa ar-rashidin al-mahdin min ba'di. Follow my sunnah and follow the sunnah of the rightly guided caliphs after me. And they're the first two of them. He also said, in yuti'in nas Abu Bakr wa Umar yarshudu. If the people obey Abu Bakr and Umar, they'll be guided. But even then, Ibn Abbas said that they can't be followed instead of Allah, or in spite of what Allah and His Messenger have said. And this is the case for Abu Bakr and Umar. It is certainly the case for those who are less than them. Which brings me to my next point, and that is that because of this, which was the whole point from the previous talk that we gave, we have to be careful. We have to be careful whom we take knowledge from, and we have to be careful with the knowledge that we're consuming, verifying its authenticity and its correctness. And people should not by any means belittle the importance of trying and striving to ascertain authenticity. People should not put that down, because we are created to follow the truth. We just talked about that. And we mentioned the statement related to this, the statement of Muhammad ibn Sirin, who said famously, he said, Inna hadha al-ilma ilmu deenan, fanduru amman ta'khuduna deenakum. He said, this knowledge is a knowledge of the religion of Allah, so be careful from whom you take your knowledge. Now, why do I say all this? I say all this to preface what I want to really talk about, and that is that we live in a time now, because of the lockdown, place orders, where a lot of us are not going to be able to go to the masajid. Some of us may not be able to go for the whole of Ramadan, and many of us will not be able to go for a large part of it, maybe the first 2 weeks of it, etc. And here we are at the end of this week, inshallah ta'ala, Ramadan is going to begin. And many people are concerned about Salat al-Tarawih. What are we going to do about this Salat that many of us love? Many of us find a great deal of pleasure. This prayer has a certain sweetness to it. Many people long for this prayer. They wait the whole year to be able to go to the mosque and pray Tarawih in Jama'ah, in congregation. And many people are concerned what is going to happen to Tarawih under these circumstances. And so you have all these fatwa that are floating around now, telling people some of these unorthodox methods of offering Tarawih, advising people, for example, to tune in to Facebook Live to a particular masjid. The masjid could be in their city. They're in the house, and they're in the masjid, it's in the city, but they're at home following that. Some people will say it could be another state, could be another country altogether, right? Some people say you could turn your phone on and play the recitation of a qari, and follow that. You're going to have all these alternative ways that people are giving you to pray Tarawih. And so I wanted to say a few things about that as it relates to what we talked about just a few moments ago about being careful from whom we take our knowledge and what knowledge we consume and what knowledge we follow. So the first thing I want to mention is that the first priority for every Muslim when it comes to the rites and rituals in general and a salat, prayer in particular, is qubul al-amal. The first thing that should be on our mind, the first thing that we should be concerned about as Muslims is making sure that our deed is going to be accepted. We are not doing these deeds and exerting ourselves, exerting energy, taking the time out to do these deeds for them to be rejected. We want them to be accepted. We want Allah's reward for these deeds. We want these deeds to be a vehicle and a means for us to attain Allah's pleasure, His forgiveness, and His paradise. We're not doing this just because we don't have anything better to do. We want it to be accepted. And we have to understand that in order for the deed to be accepted, it has to be done in the way it was legislated, prescribed. We can't do it however we want and then think it's going to be accepted. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith of Aisha, he said, "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad." Whoever does a deed, a religious act, and he doesn't do it the way we prescribed, it will be rejected. Do you want your deed to be rejected? Nobody wants their deed to be rejected. You're not praying Salat Tarawih, spending an hour and a half, 2 hours praying to Allah, begging Allah, crying to Allah to have that thrown back in your face. And so the first thing we need to have on our mind, I want this accepted, making sure I do it right. I have to do it correctly. I can't do it any kind of way and then say, Allah Kareem, He better get that. No, Allah is not obligated to do to give us anything, to accept anything. We need to make the deed acceptable. The onus is on us. But the second thing is that we should not pay attention to, because we talked about being careful. Be careful when you take your knowledge, what knowledge you're consuming, where it's coming from, and what it is, scrutinizing it. You should not pay attention to to fatawa, where a person is telling you do this, do that, and they're telling you you can do this and do that because so-and-so said, and they're not telling you who so-and-so is. They're not telling you, saying some Hanafi, some Maliki, who are these Hanbalis and Malikis? Who are they? I need to know who they are. We're the people of Isnad. We're the people who are going to be asked about this prayer, and we need to have an answer for Allah about our prayer. So there's two problems with this. If a person just said, hey, some people said it's okay, and then you just do it because some people said and you don't know who those some people are, there's two problems with that. One is that if you don't know who or why, I don't know who said it, and I don't know why they said it. What was their justification? What was their dalil, their evidence? Then you can't be sure it's credible. And if you can't be sure it's credible, because understand, a scholar said does not make it credible. As the scholars have a qa'idah, they say, kalamul ulama, yuhtajju lahu wa la yuhtajju bihi. The statement of a scholar, we need proof to support it, and it's not a proof in of itself. So just because they say a Hanbali scholar said, or some of the Hanbali said, or some of the Hanafi said, or some of the Maliki said, that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it right, doesn't make it something you can follow. If you don't know who or why, that doesn't make it automatically credible. I need to know who said it. I need to know why they said it. That's the first problem with it. The second thing is that this is something that we ourselves, we wouldn't accept. We wouldn't accept it for ourselves. So why should we expect Allah to accept it? Why should we accept? And I'm going to give you an example, a practical example. Let's say that one of us owns a company and you hire someone to do a specific task, a specific way. That you have a business, you're running a business and you're trying to make money, you're trying to make a profit. And you hire someone to do a specific task, specific way, and the results, the outcome of the doing of this task will directly affect your bottom line. So you're relying on this person to do X and to do it this way. So then that person, you come and they haven't done what you asked, and what they have done, they haven't done it the way you asked. And now this is going to have repercussions on your bottom line. And so you ask the person, okay, I told you exactly what I wanted you to do. I told you exactly the way I wanted you to do it. Why didn't you do that? And he said, well, so-and-so said that such and such said, that's not necessary. I don't have to do it like that. And then you ask him, who said? I don't know. Why did they say it? I don't know. Would you accept that as the boss who's now going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars from your bottom line because so-and-so decided to do something differently than the way you told him because so-and-so told him that so-and-so said, and he can't even tell you why they said it or who said it? Would you accept that as the boss? No, you wouldn't accept that. We wouldn't accept it. Why do we expect Allah to accept it? Why do we expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We're going to meet Allah and he's going to ask us about our prayer. As the Prophet said in the hadith, he said, أَوَّلُ مَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْهُ الْعَبْدِ صَلَاتُهُ. The first thing a slave is going to be asked about on the day of resurrection is his prayer. Allah's going to ask us, what's up with this prayer? And what are we going to say? Oh, I did it this way because so-and-so said that such and such had said. That's what you're going to say to Allah? You wouldn't accept it for yourself. Why do you want Allah to accept it? Do you want Allah? Do you want to take the chance? That's another thing too. Do you want to take the chance? Maybe Allah will accept it. Maybe he won't. Do you want to take that chance? Why not do it the way you're certain that Allah will accept it and then get your prayer accepted for certain? Be certain when you finish your prayer, Allah is going to accept this prayer bi'idhnillah. So with that, I want to come to three things. A few points about Taraweeh and then close with some advice about what we should do if we're shut in and unable to go to the masjid this Ramadan or parts of it. So the first thing is there's some things we need to understand, and there are big misconceptions amongst the Muslims about Taraweeh that lead to this anxiety about not being able to offer it in the masjid. The first thing we have to understand is that the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed Taraweeh in the masjid with the Muslims twice in his lifetime. Twice in his lifetime did the Prophet ﷺ pray Taraweeh, leading the Muslims in the masjid in congregation. It only happened twice. It was not the Prophet's regular practice, nor that of his companions during his lifetime, to pray Taraweeh in the masjid. Is it a sunnah? Yes, it is a sunnah because the Prophet did do it. But we have to understand that Taraweeh and the masjid do not necessarily go hand in hand. They're not part and parcel. If you don't have one, you can't have the other. That misconception has to be removed from our minds. You can pray Taraweeh in your home. In fact, the asl, the original rule, the standard is to pray it in your home. And the masjid is the exception to the rule. The second thing is that the Prophet's companions, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, they used to make, after his passing during the Khilaf of Umar and then afterwards on down the line of history, they did pray Taraweeh in congregation in the masjid together. But when they did, they didn't do it with the intention of making Khatam al-Quran, completing the Quran, the entire Quran in Taraweeh. They didn't do that. That they would bring a reciter, they would pick someone who was skilled in the recitation of the Quran, and that person would just recite. He would recite at his leisure. He would recite on his own volition, whatever he wanted to recite, and they would recite for long periods of time. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. But they did not have the intention of completing the recitation in Ramadan. They just would recite. That's another misconception. A lot of us think, well, you can't make Taraweeh unless you're going to recite the whole Quran. And some people struggle. They struggle, or they struggle, they don't know the whole Quran. And if they were to read it from the Mus'haf, they would struggle, they would make mistakes. They're not that proficient. And some of them, they don't feel comfortable in their madhab and the school of thought that they follow, and what they've been always taught is that you're not supposed to hold the Mus'haf while you're reading Quran. While you're praying. So all those things become obstacles to them. Why? Because they're in the impression, I have to do the whole Quran if I'm going to do Taraweeh. They don't go hand in hand. They don't. You can read anything in Taraweeh, and that's what the early Muslims used to do. The third, as it relates to Taraweeh, is that it's confirmed from Uthman ibn Affan that he actually prayed the night prayer on occasion, at least once, and maybe more than once. He prayed the night prayer reciting one ayah from the Quran. He stood the whole night in prayer, and all he recited was one ayah. And that was the ayah from Surah Yusuf, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. Indeed, to Allah, I complain of my sadness, my sorrow, my difficulty. I put that in the hands of Allah. I complain to Allah about that, etc. He just kept repeating that ayah over and over again. And وَهَذَا يُؤَكِّدُ, this further emphasizes and confirms the fact that you don't have to recite the whole Quran in Taraweeh, in the night prayer. You can recite anything. If all you know is قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, you can recite قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ and keep repeating it over and over and over again. And that is Taraweeh. And it might be accepted even more so than the person who is going out of their way to recite a lot of the Quran without ta'ammul, without concentrating and having khushu' and reflecting upon the meaning, and their heart really isn't involved because they're too busy looking and reading and concentrating on what they're reading instead of the meaning of what they're reading, and letting that meaning affect them and pass over their heart and impact them, etc. So that said, I'll bring me to the last and final point. And I know I've gone a little bit longer than we usually do, but because of the importance of it, I really want to make sure this was clear, is that my recommendation is that those of us who are shut in, stuck at home, can't go to the masjid to offer Taraweeh, that we pray at home, in Jama'ah, in congregation with our families. And we read whatever we are able to read from the Quran, based upon what we know of the Quran. And those who feel comfortable reading from the Mus'haf can do so. Those who don't feel comfortable, just read what you have memorized, even if it's a small amount. And the thing about this suggestion that I'm giving you is it's a suggestion that no scholar from any madhab will say is wrong. And we talked about it earlier about wanting to do the thing that we know will be accepted. We're going to be asked about this prayer, and we want to meet Allah and be able to be confident that He's going to accept it, and we're going to have an acceptable answer when we meet Him. So this is my advice, brothers and sisters. You can take it or leave it. But the one thing that I want you to take away from everything that we said is that whatever you're going to follow, whoever you're going to follow, whatever they say, they are obligated to be able to substantiate what they're saying with proof. And you cannot just use the fact that X scholar said as a justification to do whatever you want to do. But rather, we are not sent on this earth to follow scholars per se. We're sent on this earth to follow the truth, and the scholars are supposed to be a means toward that end and not an end in and of themselves. With that, I bring it to a close. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who listen to the talk and follow the best of it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala an yanfa'ana bima 'allamana wa an yu'allimana ma yanfa'una. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us with what we learned and to teach us what is beneficial. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who offer this Taraweeh in whatever way we possibly can, whether at home or in the masjid, and that we do it in the way that He accepts, and that He accepts it and rewards us beyond forgiveness, beyond heavy scales. He rewards us with Jannah, paradise on the day of judgment. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.